Jesus and his disciples walked by him. Jesus healed him. Jesus brought sight back to him. And that's kind of how I imagine this guy blind for his whole life. And all of a sudden Jesus heals him. And he had to have been excited about it. So I want to take a little walk through. This is found in John 9. So if you guys want to turn to John 9, and I'm going to need some help. Actually, this morning I actually had it all set up. Raquel was going to help me with this. And I was getting a little nervous because she wasn't showing, and then she texted in sick. So we will forgive her from that. But now I'm going to need a volunteer that wants to come up and read this story. And I will warn you that I will be stopping you as we go through. But any volunteers? If we don't get any volunteers, I'm volunteering my... Come on up.
What chapter?
John 9. Yeah, it helps. You could read off my computer, but then all my notes could throw you for a loop. So. And I will even let you... In the Old Testament, I'm so fast. John 9, starting from verse 1, you can have a seat, you can have a microphone. I was supposed to have brought my own, because I was going to sit down and browse. No.
As he walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?"
Okay, stop right there. You're going to get these interruptions. So Jesus is walking along with his disciples and they stop. Okay, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? We're not going to get into this because we could take probably a whole month and break this all down as to why they would ask him. But in the book of Exodus, in the book of Numbers, in the book of Deuteronomy, and in the book of Ezekiel, it talks about how the sins of the fathers get passed on for generations. But we're not going to get into that much because we are now going to find out that's not the case. So go ahead.
"Neither this man nor his parents sinned," said Jesus, "but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." After saying this, he spit on the ground, and made some mud with his saliva and put it on the man's eyes. "Go," he told them, "wash in the pool of Siloam." This means sent. So the man went and washed. He came home seeing. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, "Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg?" Some claimed that he was. Others said, "No, he only looks like him." But he himself insisted, "I am the man."
Okay, we'll stop right there. So this guy was blind from birth. All of a sudden Jesus walks along, spits in the mud, makes a little mud pies, throws them in his eyes, and says, "Go wash." The guy washes, and could you imagine what things would be like if you were blind your whole life and all of a sudden you could see? This guy was running around, all excited. But then, now you got to think about the neighbors. It's kind of a legitimate question. Is this the same guy? He looks like him, but he can see. So anyway, we're now going to go further into the story. But again, just have that in your mind that the people that know him have known him to be blind his whole life, known him to be a beggar. And now he's up running around and all excited.
"How then were your eyes open?" they asked. He replied, "The man they called Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and then I could see." "Where is this man?" they asked him. "I don't know," he said.
Okay. So the blind man's neighbors are asking questions about Jesus. Does this guy have an answer? Does the blind man really have an answer? His response, I don't know. I don't know.
They brought to the Pharisees the man who had been blind. Now the day on which Jesus had made the mud and opened the man's eyes was the Sabbath.
Okay, we'll stop there a minute. This is kind of, as I was reading through this is kind of an, oh, by the way, statement. John is telling this story of this, Jesus' disciples walking along, there's a blind man, Jesus heals them, this guy goes home and people are asking, hey, what about him? They're asking all this, oh, and by the way, it was the Sabbath. That wasn't really John didn't make, oh, and on the Sabbath, this happened. No, John was just like, Jesus did this guy was excited, this guy's going out telling people about what happened, and, oh, by the way, it was the Sabbath. Now, with it being the Sabbath, the Pharisees, who were the people in charge of the churches then, they're getting a little bit upset. There's a couple things that happen here. First of all, it doesn't really say this in this story, but one of the things that I've heard is that the Pharisees get upset because, first of all, by Jesus spitting on the ground and making mud, he's working on the Sabbath. And he's healing someone on the Sabbath, telling him to go wash and go. And yeah, it's just, that doesn't fly very well back in those days. Go ahead.
Therefore the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He put mud on my eyes, the man replied, and I washed, and now I see. Okay.
Now, of course, the Pharisees, they want to investigate. They want to know. So you got all this stuff going on, and we need to know. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to find out what's really going on here, because this just isn't the way we would want things. Okay.
Some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. But others asked, how can a sinner perform such signs? So they were divided. Then they turned again to the blind man. What have you to say about him? It was your eyes he opened. The man replied, he is a prophet.
All right. So the guy says, hey, he's a prophet. Do you think this is the answer they are looking for? Do you think when the Pharisees are going to investigate what's going on, do you think that by the blind man saying he's a prophet, they're, oh, hey, oh, good, all right, that's fine, we're good, thank you, you can go on. Let's find out where they go.
They still did not believe that he had been blind and that he had received his sight until they sent for the man's parents. Is this your son, they asked? Is this the one you say was born blind? How is it he can see? We know he is our son, the parents answered, and we know that he was born blind. But he can see now, or who has opened his eyes we don't know. Ask him. He is of age, he will speak for himself. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who already had decided that anyone who acknowledged Jesus was the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. That was why his parents said, he is of age, ask him.
Okay, stop there. Someone's going down for this. This guy's been healed. The Pharisees are almost out for blood on this. We're gonna find out what's going on. Someone's going down, and right now they're not liking the answers they're getting. And you can tell someone's going down because they're going after the parents, and the parents have the fear that, wait a minute, if we give them what we think might be or at least what my son's saying is the right answer, and they don't like it, we're getting thrown out of the church. And that just, they're almost on a witch hunt here. Go ahead.
A second time they summoned the man who had been blind. Give glory to God by telling the truth, they said. We know this man is a sinner. He replied, whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see. Then they asked him, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered, I have told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?
All right. I love that. Exactly. So how many of you secretly on the inside said, yes, good answer. Actually, some of you said it out loud. That was awesome. But these guys still don't get it. They still don't get it. Now, let's kind of ask ourselves a question. As we're sitting here, it's easy to stand up here and poke fun of the Pharisees. Come on, just looking for the answer that you want. You're not finding it, so you're getting upset. How often do we do that? How often do we find ourselves in a situation, something that's not really the answer I'm looking for, so guess I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to keep asking until I find what I want. Sometimes we do that even to the point of, well, if we bend the truth a little bit, I can make it fit what I want it to say. And we see that in churches all of the time. That, well, we really want to stand for this, so let's kind of bend things around to kind of make it fit. So yes, as we stand here or sit here, whatever, and laugh and poke fun of the Pharisees, for me, this was kind of a gut check. So I'm reading this, and as I'm coming up with stuff, I'm like, boy, we're going to pound on those Pharisees. And then I kind of got, wait a minute, but how often do we find ourselves doing that same thing? But again, let's go back now. I have told you already and you didn't listen. What do you want, or what do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? Love that. Love that. Go ahead. Verse 28.
Then they hurled insults at him and said, "You are this fellow's disciple. We are the disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from." The man answered, "Now that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the man's eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." To this they replied, "You have stepped in sin at birth. How dare you lecture us?" And they threw him out.
All right. I got a feeling that at this point in time, the Pharisees were kind of taken back to school by this former blind man. And they weren't very happy about it. This guy put them in their place, and I think they kind of realized it. And they weren't very happy about it. And again, this should be a reaction that might be recognizable by some of us, that maybe we do this, or we know people who do, that, boom, I got you. And then, fine, just get out of here. Don't even want to hear about it, just go. Yep, you're gone. That was kind of their reaction to something very simple that this blind man just kind of, oh, wait a minute, guys. You don't even know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will. Nobody's ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this was not from God, he could do nothing. Yeah, it kind of upset me.
Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" "Who is he, sir?" the man asked. "Tell me so that I may believe in him." Okay, hold on a second here.
So the blind man is quite convinced that Jesus is someone great. I mean, he was going around telling people, heck, he just told the Pharisees. Quite convinced this Jesus is somebody that's wonderful. And as he said, as the blind man said, this guy's a prophet. But yet he still wants to learn more. It wasn't, when Jesus comes by and says, "Do you believe?" His answer is, "Who is he? Tell me so that I may believe in him." He wants to learn more. It's not like, "Dude, you healed me. I can see. I'm good. Way to go. Thank you." It was more than that. I want to learn more. Go ahead, verse 37.
Jesus said, "You have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you." Then the man said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, so the blind will see, and those who will see become blind." So the Pharisees who were with him heard him say and asked, "What, are we blind too?" And Jesus said, "If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains."
Okay. Thank you. Round of applause. So like I asked earlier, how often do we find ourselves like the Pharisees, constantly looking for the answer we want to fit our beliefs? Willing to ask the questions, but not willing to know the answers. And again, that's what we found the Pharisees doing there. They keep asking the questions, but every time they get an answer, they do not like it. How often do we find ourselves in that situation? So, but really we've got two stories here. Maybe you feel more like the blind man. Maybe you don't really know all of the answers. I think one of the best answers he had is, "I once was blind, now I can see." I don't know. I don't know the answers to this. I don't know. All I know is I once was blind, now I can see. How many stories of your life can you tell when people want, why do you go to church? I don't understand. Why do you bother going to church on Sunday? Why do you bother reading your Bible? Why do you bother praying? Why do you worship this God? I don't understand. And I think a lot of times as Christians we find ourselves in situations like that, and we're afraid of those situations. I know myself, when I first started getting called into ministry, I'm like, I don't know, because I don't have all the answers. And God's just kind of laid it on my heart. I don't have to have all the answers. I have to have all the questions. And I have to be willing to, when people ask questions, look for the right answer and be willing to accept it. Sometimes, all I can say is, I don't know. I once was this. Now I'm this. I once was blind. Now I see. Sometimes that's the easiest part of telling your story. The easiest part of telling God's story is just, hey, it was this. Now it's this. So you don't need to have all the answers. You just answer what you know. Hopefully you will still have the desire to learn and grow and find more answers. And that's one of the biggest problems that I see with some Christians or some people that are struggling with faith and struggling with God is that, well, I don't know, I've got all sorts of questions and I don't know, I've got to find the answers. Give me time to find the answers. My question comes back to them is, are you really looking for answers? Because if they're not looking for answers, they're not going to find them. And it depends on, also, do you have in your mind the answers that you are looking for? Because if you're looking for a certain answer, all the questions you ask are going to be derived right around that answer, because you want it to say what you want it to say. And that shouldn't be it. We want to be able to tell Jesus' story. We want to be able to tell God's story. And I am looking at a whole bunch of God's stories right here. Just, hey, I once was this. I once was blind. Now I'm that. Now I see. Sometimes it's as simple as that. And sometimes it's as simple as, I don't really have an answer for that. I tell you what, if you are willing to find the right answer, I'll look for it with you. Just let them know. And then help people find the answer. I've said it many times before, and you're going to hear it many times again from me, that God is too great for me to keep to myself, and I would hope the same for you guys. So that's basically the story of the blind man. The story of the blind man and the story of the Pharisees. Hopefully, as we realize where we are as far as the Pharisees go, how our lives compared to that we want to be more like the blind man. Instead of looking for the answers that we want, if we don't have the answer, hey, I don't know, but this is what I do know. And let's go with that, and we'll find more answers. At this point, we're going to take communion.